Hey everyone, so just want to go over a bit of a tutorial here. So we've been given this site, this Revit file, and we want to work on a project or design something. In this case, this is for a class, and we want to begin working with that. And I think from my perspective, there's two different ways. So I'm probably going to split this into two parts. I'm probably going to pick the more complicated way to start because I think it might be the better way for most people. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull some essential elements from this file and start a new Revit file. So to start that, I'm just in the 3D view here. So I've clicked up here the little house icon and opened up a 3D view. And we're going to go to File, New, Project. And one of the things I always recommend for people starting projects is we want to go to Browse. And my folder that opens up here is the metric folder. So if you want to start working with metric, default metric is the one to go to. But if you want to work with Imperial, I'm going to click the Up folder button here. And I'm going to go to English Imperial. And I'm going to go to the default template here. We're going to click Open. And we're going to click OK. And so this is going to kind of create a new project. And I like to do this because it just kind of helps us start fresh and we don't have to worry about anything that was done in the previous project that isn't to our liking. So we're just going to jump back to the previous one here. And if you're wondering how I get these colored tabs, I'm using a plugin called Revit. And there's a function called tab coloring. So just a great little tip for those that don't know about that. So we're going to start in here. We're going to go in and copy all of the items in here. And we're going to go to this little copy button up here. We're going to click copy. And we're going to go down to our orange view, which is our other project. This is why I love Revit. It just makes my life a little bit easier trying to figure stuff out. We're going to open up the 3D view. And we're going to go in here and we're going to paste and align to selected levels. We're going to align to level 1. And there's actually another tip here. So I think aligning to level 1, I think, is a great way of doing it. Let's just do one more step before we do that. So I'm actually, you know what, let me click OK. And I just want to show you what's going on in here. And so it's going to bring this building in and it's going to reorient everything to our level 1. And I think this is actually a good way of doing it. The other way to do it would be to create a separate level. So you can see how their site's really, it's not really high, but if we compare it to just going into our side view, depending on where we're working on the site, which really level 1 is kind of at our road level here in regards to this site. If we wanted to design anywhere up in this field area, which is kind of part of the allowable, building envelope of the site, we are quite low. So I'm just going to hit Control-Z here, and I'm going to go back out, and let's go into an elevation view. We're going to create a new elevation here, and we're just going to copy this down. Let's copy it down like 10 feet. And we're just going to call this site level. All right, so let's go back to our 3D view. We're going to go in here. We're going to paste align to selected levels. And this time we're going to paste to our site level. And the cool thing about this is it allows us to have some adjustments to the site. In a bit of a disconnected way from our levels. I personally, when I draw, I like to make sure my main floor of the building is always at level 1 or 0 for that matter. And I think it just makes my life a little bit easier when it comes to modeling. So we have this here. And the next thing I'm actually going to do is I'm going to delete this original building that's in here. This is not, this kind of area of the site we've kind of deemed to not be applicable. It's kind of another unit. It's not part of our property. And so I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to select, I'm going to try to grab all these building elements. I'm going to disconnect that tree, and I'm going to leave that retaining wall there. And we may have a few other elements to grab here. And I'm just going to delete everything I have. And we'll go back and delete the rest here in a second. It doesn't look like I actually grabbed a whole lot. So I'm just going to select this again here. Deselect this tree. I'm going to tab over those walls, and then I'm just going to also delete these building pads that are really low down here. And that kind of gets our site back to normal. I'm not going to worry about this building being here right now. If someone wanted to incorporate that in the renderings, I could do another video on how I would keep that on this file in a better way. But anyways, we'll continue on here. So the next thing that I think is really important for people as they work through their project is understanding where you want to develop. And so theoretically, somewhere in this area is really where, and I think there's a bit of a setback property line, but we can't take down any trees, and so we kind of want to build in this area. The other thing to be mindful of while you're working through this is there's a bit of a ledge, I guess, on this side of the property, and so we want to consider our entry and exit point from this side. And so it's not super important, but I think it's always important to think about context and what we're trying to do with our project. So let's erase these lines here. How do I reset? Let's just exit drawing. There we go. So the reason why I brought that up is we want to understand what we're trying to do here. So I'm going to go to our site file, or our site view, and this area in here is our you could call this, for those that are still learning AutoCAD, this is kind of our 0, this is kind of our origin. In Revit, it calls it a project base point or an internal origin. And it's kind of where we want to locate a lot of our building elements. It'll really help you in the long run if you can locate a lot of your building elements in this area. So with that being said, I'm going to grab all of our site elements here, and I'm going to move this kind of maybe the middle here to this point, like so. And it's going to give us a bit of an error message here. Sorry, I'm moving the wrong thing here. And let's just go back to 3D and just double check everything is fine. It looks like everything is fine. Yeah, everything's fine there, I think. And I think that successfully allows us to move our site in position. So now the next thing just to look at is, right now our level 1 is below ground in this area. And so the cool thing about locating this is we can actually have adjustment of our site features now without having to do a lot of work. So I'm actually going to set my site level to be 9 feet down further. So I'm going to set it to be level 20, and this actually kind of worked half as well as I wanted it to. We have one more step, which is we just need to lower a few more features, which includes our topography and a few other things. So I'm just going to move this down. Let's move this down 9 more feet. I'm just moving to a side view to do that. I'm going to hit VG here for a second, and I'm going to turn off planting. I'm just going to turn off our trees here. And this is kind of a nice thing to do actually anyways, just to maximize a little bit of the performance of your project. So it looks like there's a few things that didn't move down. We have our stair right here, and we're going to change our stair level to be site level. And we probably need to move that stair up now. Yeah, so let's move that stair up. And I think we need to, we don't want it to be that low. So I'm just going to do, to clean this up, I'm just going to cut a section right where that stair is. So I think once you do a bit of this cleaning up and orient stuff to the appropriate level, it'll make things a little bit easier. And I need to make this fine view. Move this stuff out of the way. And I'm just going to run a dimension between here and here. So we probably need to make this stair maybe make this positive 5 feet. And we'll set these variables like that, and that should move our stair up to the proper spot, which it did. And then all of these retaining walls, depending on how much detail you want to do, we want to lower all those edges down. So what I'm going to do just to make this simple is we're going to change our level to be site level. And let's actually make this -2. And let's change this again to site level. And it still wasn't on it. Let's make this -10. And then we'll go to site level. So that really brings that down, so we don't want that. Let's try that again. So a little bit of trial and error here. I'm just going to take this to be 0, and I might make this 4, and make this 4 from site level, and this wall, and a couple of these walls. They don't need to be that high, so I'll maybe make this 3. Maybe make this 1 here down to 2, like so. And I'm just going to leave the rest of the stepping. I think ideally you want to go back and fix a bunch of this stepping in a few of these spots. Maybe make this down to 2. So probably something you want to do is maybe lower and raise these more systematically than I did. I'm just kind of taking the fast approach, maybe go with 5 for these. But I think you'd want to replicate that how it is. But the goal with this is really just to get some of these items that weren't aligned to our property in a proper way. So let's make this site level. Actually, you know what? We can go back and so this wall. Yeah, never mind. That's not going to work. Let's just make this 2 feet. Make this 3 feet. Sure, something like that. And we kind of have our site back here. So now this is all kind of put back together, similar to what was there originally. So a couple things. I'm just going to check this right here. Is this floating or is it on ground? It looks like it's kind of on ground. So for example, if you had a street light that was kind of just hanging up in the air, we can actually pick host, and if we click something, it'll bring it back down. This happened to me a few times when I was looking at this site. Just some of the elements were attached, and we just had to do that to reattach them. So now when we go to make changes to the level, when we lower or raise that level, I'm sorry, I'm going the wrong direction. When we lower or change that level for site level, it should bring most of these elements with it since we modified the relationship. And so the topography would probably be one that doesn't, but most of the other stuff will go with it because it is related to those elements. Topography, we can't really relate to a floor. It's related to our 0, kind of origin in the project. But I think this really starts to make things a little bit easier to work with. And I would probably recommend most people starting their site level out at -20 and kind of follow this step. And I think you want to follow it so you need to fix some stuff. And I think that's a good process to reorient some of the stuff to be that site level. And so that's kind of how to get working with your project. And I'm just going to draw a little box here so that we can see how that looks. I'm just going to draw a box. And depending on how you want to orient your box, I will rotate my site features before I rotate the box. But now we can see we have, sorry, wrong project. Our box kind of floating here. And one of the concepts for this project is we want you to work with ultimately the original topography that is there. And by work with it, I really mean we don't want you to negatively affect that topography. And so building a building that is sitting on it and lightly touching that site, I think, is really important. So until you really know exactly where you want to place your building and how you want to place your building, keeping it up a little bit high is good. And then as you adjust and refine some stuff, we can grab some of this stuff. Let me go actually do this. Let's select all instances of our topography. So let's select all that. Let's go to filter. Let's go to topography. So there's 6 pieces of topography. And we're going to grab our site level at the same time. And we're just going to move those up. Just so maybe our building isn't floating as much. So maybe we'll go up 4, 6. And that way our building's still floating a little bit out of the topography, but not completely. And so I think that really gets you started. Maybe 2 last things I will do. I'm going to delete my building here. We're going to go to VG. We're going to turn our trees back on. So we'll go down to planting. And the one thing about these trees is they are situated on the topography. So if you move that topography up and down, it should move as well. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to grab all of these site features. I'm going to go into filter. I'm going to uncheck levels. Now where's levels? And I am going to group it. So up here there's a button called create group. And let's see if it lets me do this. Yeah, okay. So we're going to call this site features. And so what this does is if we decide to create that box, as I mentioned, actually, let's go back to our site view. If we decide to create that box around this internal origin, that really gets you into a good place to work with this site a little bit better. So we'll draw a box around here. And say, for example, we want our building to be a little bit more square on the site. We can grab this whole group that we had. We can click rotate. We're going to hit the place button. And we're going to place, I'm going to follow this line right here. So we're going to grab that and we're going to rotate it down. And that rotates our building so it's a bit more square on our site. Just want to note, if you are going to make some of those changes, just note that you've done that, because we want to make sure we understand where north is still, really for sun studies and all that kind of stuff. I think in some respects there is maybe a bit more of a methodical way of doing this, but I think for the purpose of the studio, this is probably the easiest for most of the students at this kind of skill level. I think this will give you enough information to work with this site and kind of get going. So I'm going to stop this video. I'm going to do this a different way for you, and then we'll pick this video back up and I'll show you some other techniques to ultimately help you kind of work with this project.